Welcome, my friends. Hopefully this is working and hopefully you can hear me. Radio mic seems okay. I'm hoping the music in the background isn't too loud for you. Shout out if it is. Equally, all the way through, I may change music when we get to the storytelling. I can't hear the volume, so you'll need to let me know if it's working. Yes, here I am, Sten. My wonderful assistant has just given me a big thumbs up. So, ooh, Legion of the Damned. I was trying to think of an appropriate 40k comment, but my brain went blank. And quite a few people in here. Welcome, welcome all. So this is partially in response to the channel flatlining earlier in the week and me wanting to say thank you to everybody that's come and supported. It's an idea I've been floating with, but wanted enough people in chat to be able to tell stories. Oh, I'm in trouble now. Derek's in the room. Here's where he gets his own back at me for all of the grief I give him when he's streaming. So the idea for this is you create the story, I tell it. So it will start with a very, very simple framework of probably starting in a bar in Arkham. And as I start telling the story, I'll be monitoring chat to see how it goes. Oh, I hope so, Jason. If no one says anything, I'm going to have to think really fast. Equally, I'm going to have to think fairly fast anyway. It's an experiment. It may work. It may go horribly wrong. We're about to find out. So that's the idea. When I get to that point in a moment, we'll go to the nice misty background and then just give me ideas and I'll pick from what I see going past in chat how I take the story forward and how we guide it. There's no huge format, there's no huge plan besides Lovecraft, Arkham to start off with. It's Lovecraft, it could go anywhere. And to have fun and to enjoy it and to give everybody a chance to engage. So that's the idea. Oh, yes, thank you. And please like, subscribe, comment, and you'll hear me saying this a lot. It sounds like a comment's worth 1,000 likes. Thankfully, Derek, no, you don't get to roll dice for me. Because Derek, you have failed the roll. Not that Derek of Canje Studios is honestly anything to do with Derek the Dice. So, all of that said, before we get going, has anyone got any questions? I want to give it another couple of minutes just in case we get anyone else joining before we get fully started. You could roll dice, Derek, but what they'd be for, I've got no idea. I'm certainly not role-playing to quite that level. This is interactive storytelling, not roleplay. Oh dear, Derek the Dice was just consumed by Nyarlathotep. Good call. Timing is equally about right, so speakeasy, I like that. So we've got a lonely drunk man walking into a speakeasy, but the speakeasy is fun to play with. A drunk man in a speakeasy. That works quite well. Anything else? Any questions? Thing to be aware of, chat is probably about 10 seconds behind where I am, so there's a chance Catherine could make an entrance. Was there... The woman was in Jebediah, I thought, not Derek's. But equally, Catherine could make an entrance. So, yeah, as I was saying, a comment's worth 1,000 words. The more comments I can get, the more the algorithm keeps picking up. It's as likes and comments stop coming that it appears to peter off and disappear. Thanks, Stephen. So yeah, I think we're about ready to go. So let's switch to the swirly. And so the music could be clunky. I'm really how's that? Go. So we're in a bar. On a dark, drizzly night in Arkham, the fog was low across the ground and the moon was covered by heavy clouds. It was dark on the streets, and all that could be seen by was the faint glow of the streetlights. Down a secluded side street, there was a little door, only known to certain patrons. The door opened to what looked like a warehouse to the common eye. But at the back, there were some crates that could just slide open. And if you knew how and when, that took you into a dimly lit room, a den of iniquity. But it was prohibition. Alcohol wasn't allowed. But in small areas like this, if you knew where to go, you could get yourself a drink. Sat sipping his cheap whiskey, feeling the burn as it went down his throat, was Donald. Donald was a gangster. He helped ship in the moonshine. He loved his shine. His own special one was a breed of apple shine, but that wasn't for the general public. Drinking his, he watched, he saw the crowd, the desperate, the destitute. For this was no upper class speakeasy. This wasn't hidden behind fancy doors where the rich or suave went, the high levels of the mafia. He catered to the lower classes. This was going to be the best hooch in the room, and it was just his. And the whiskey then was not particularly good. The room was full of dark corners, but not many were out due to the rain. Donald wondered how he could expand. He always wanted more. How could he bring in more? How could he move up? How could he raise? How could he go from the destitute to the rich? Gradually, he saw a small crowd come in, recognizing a cheap hood, Michael. Now, Michael worked occasionally with the police and had ways of knowing when they were intercepting hooch. So he wandered over. He might get some more beer, some more shine. Who knows what could come through those routes. 1 second. Windows update. You gotta love it when you're doing things live. Go away. Sorry about that. He called Michael over to sit. He nodded. Michael turned. There's a new container coming in. It's coming from Innsmouth. I don't know what's in there, but there are barrels. And in the barrels is supposed to be the good stuff. The police are going to hit it in about 3 hours. But if you get out there first, you could get there before them. So, nodding, he gave a small tip and then got up to head out. Innsmouth was a strange place. He didn't like it. The people were weird. He was fairly certain that there were a good number of kissing cousins that formed a majority of the population. But if he could get something to raise him up, then maybe that was his chance. So he headed out, put on his coat, his hat, hunched over as the rain poured down, the drizzle seeping through his clothes, making him cold and wet. Looking through the misty streets, it was almost as though there were figures appearing in and out of the mist. It was one of those nights. A chilly, eerie night, the kind where people just disappeared. Or the insane rang and shouted. He jumped as he heard an owl hoot in the background. Having heard it, paused, put his hand to check he was carrying his gun. It gave him a nice feeling of secureness. Not that he ever really used it. Then he headed. He could feel a tingling at his back, kind of glancing over his shoulder. There were some swirls, some eddies in the fog. Paused to look. There was darkness. There were shadows. Were the shadows moving? He couldn't tell. He shook himself off. He was being foolish and kept walking. As he went further forward, he thought he heard a footstep, a tinkling behind him. I don't know how I ended up back in the study. He he headed through the dark. He needed a few more people. And then a truck. He had to get out there. He knew a few local hoods. He brought them together and grabbed the van. It was covered. This was a good thing. He got out of the rain. Again, he sort of saw movement behind him, but cast it off. And they headed gradually into the night. He headed along the dark roads, getting darker still as they moved out of the lit areas. Just the beams of the light catching the rain. The constant drone and drum on the top of the van as it bumped along. It was a long drive. They had to get out and get to it before the police, and then get away. His crew of misfits were moaning. They didn't like the weather. They were a rough-looking lot, scarred, grumbling, from various backgrounds. You had the castaways from the mafia, the castaways from the Irish, the castaways from the British, even a few from the other various areas of society that people cared not to mention. Moving up, they heard a van coming in the other direction and pulled over. A couple got out and they scattered some caltrops over the road. Gradually, the truck came towards them. There was the faint pop and hiss as it rumbled to a stop. They drew their guns and got out. There was only one strange old gentleman, tall, about 7 feet, and thin. He had a strangely sibilant voice. "What's happening? Why are you here? Why are you stopping me?" There was something about him, something unearthly and unreal. They drew their weapons, knives, and Donald drew his gun. The man backed. "If you want my goods, that's fine. Take them. But don't hurt me. I think, though, you will find you have more than you expected." Donald made the old man turn round and brought the butt down on the back of his head. He seemed slow to crumple, but gradually fell to the ground, almost as though it was faked. But it hit him hard enough to put out a cowl, so there's nothing that could be wrong there. The men shuffled him along, and there was a faint slimy sensation, but they put it out of their mind. There were 4 large barrels in the back of the wagon, and they were heavy. Heavier than you'd expect a barrel to be. The men grumbled. In the rain, there was a smell of fish oozing from the barrels and in the back, but this had come from Innsmouth, so that was no great surprise. They got the barrels and carefully loaded them one at a time onto the back of the truck, and then headed back through the rain. Much to their surprise, they hadn't gone far when there was a pop and one of the tyres went flat. They looked at each other nervously. Two of the men got out, and Donald pulled and held his gun. He was nervous. There were police in the area, there were illegal goods, and there was something about the night. There was something about that man, and there was something about the cargo. Something wrong, something he didn't like. The men went. And two men went to change the tyre. It was one of the back ones, so they couldn't see that clearly. The fog was getting thicker and heavier. As the fog got thicker, they waited. There was no movement. The wagon stayed solid. So Donald looked out and went out himself. The men had disappeared. The tyre was on the side, the winch was on the side, but they were gone, with just a couple of traces of them being pulled into the bushes. And he could almost hear a growling and a munching coming from before. There was a dark, crunching noise. He looked out, couldn't see anything. He called to the men. Silence. Gun in hand, he got another two to come out and repair the wagon as he was holding the gun in case any other trouble came. Then the three of them slid back into the car and the truck drove off. It was bumpy and they were nervous. What had happened to the two men? They couldn't tell. As they headed back towards town, a police car passed by. Odd, but they kept going. Yes. Gradually, the street lights came and they relaxed as they got back to Arkham. On one side, they could see the Gothic towers of Miskatonic University, and up on a hill, the dread Arkham Asylum, where so many went to end their days. Quietly, they pulled up round the back of the warehouse, and, with more trouble being only three, eased off the barrels, rolling them in. They were all heavily fastened, and the fog seemed to roll into the room along with the barrels. Now, this was his stash. He didn't want the goons coming in, he didn't want them knowing exactly what he'd got. So, he hushed them away, paid them off, and went to get a crowbar. The stench as he opened the first barrel was mindless. And as he did, a kind of green smoke poured out across the floor. He looked down, and bobbing at the top of the liquid of the barrel was a head. He dropped the crowbar and screamed, not understanding, for the head in front of him was one of the two people he'd sent out. But the wagon hadn't moved. How had the head got into the barrel that was sealed? Panicking now, he got the crowbar, popped the next one, and it was just a greenish liquid. And the next, and the next. The other two were clear. Only one had a head. Same green liquid he hadn't tried and was loath to. Pulling a face, he put his hand in, lifting the head out. As he did, the eyes seemed to open and look at him. The little worm crawled out of the mouth. Dropping onto the floor, he squished it. As he tossed the head away, he noticed that beneath it, a second bobbed to the surface. It was the other man, and this one had several worms coming out of the mouth, out of the ears, and out of the eyes. Loath to touch it, he kicked over the barrel, not concerned about the valuable contents, and the head bounced along the floor. He paused, left that barrel, got something and kicked the heads out into the street, carefully stamping and squelching the worm creatures. But there was something odd with them. They weren't worms, they were more like tentacles, moving on their own with little pustulant suckers reaching out trying to get him. He grabbed a bat and just smashed them into the ground and stepped back. Well, 3 barrels was better than none. Going to the back, he got some bottles and filled 2 or 3, putting them to the side. Put the lids back on the remaining barrels and took the 3 bottles down into the speakeasy. It was now late at night, and the ones remaining were the true desperates, those who couldn't live without alcohol. So, who better than to test his new load on? He brought them and told them he was offering a free drink. He wanted to try this new shine. Poured each one out a shot and handed them over. Sitting back, all the men, amazed that they were getting something free, for Donald was not known to be the giving type, grabbed the drinks and necked them in one. The look on the faces were looks of horror as they tasted and the drink burnt down their throats. Then they started to shake and quiver. Their eyes went wide. Donald didn't know what to do and started backing up. Screams came out of their mouths as they started to shake, and their bodies started to twist and change and split. Tentacles came out with suckers, big, similar to the worms, but big suckers, reaching out and clasping at each other. Their eyes bulged and popped out of their heads. Their ears grew, their teeth expanded, their jaws broke, forming into fangs as their bodies twisted. Then they turned and looked. Donald had pushed himself back into a corner. His gun was there. As they started to approach, he placed it forward and shot and shot, still clicking as the click went empty. The bodies shuddered and shook, and then collapsed, besides one, hearing the banging, turned and slithered up the stairs and out of the door. The next morning, when his partner came in, he found Donald sat there with the gun, going click, 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 click. Though they took the gun away, for the remainder of his life, all Donald did was go click, click. His partner wanted nothing to do with the new drink and found a buyer for the barrels. Surprisingly, a young lady showed up, blonde and friendly, though her coat was almost a cloak. She smiled nicely at him as she got the barrels and loaded them up to take them away, never to be seen again. How was that? That was fun, but hard work. I think I need to work out how I can control the chat so I can see suggestions in amongst everything else. You got the idea, Sten. She was actually a character as requested at the beginning from one of the other books. I'm actually considering I literally made that up on the fly. I'm quite happy with that. I hope you all enjoyed it. It was nice to have all of you along for the ride, and certainly I will plan and I will try and do more of these. If I'm going to get this number of people, it becomes easy. I've just got to improve the technology, try and make the music part work better. I did have a hard time concentrating on both chat and telling the story and separating the two, which is why I need to work out how I'm going to handle that. I know how I'd like to do it, but I'm a long way off being able to do that because I will need a second person to handle music, handle sound effects and handle images so that someone can be running images in and out to give the same level of production that the normal videos do. I've never actually played that scenario, but it's nice if I got that kind of feel. And the good thing is, this is an easy way to create content. It's hard work at the time, but it takes me the best part of a day to a day and a half per video that I put out to make them. Whereas this just happens. So certainly I can see more of this. I might make this a regular Sunday evening thing. Let me know what you think in the comments. And oh, I might want to hear more about your roots then at a later time, as something that I might use it for writing an actual story that gets produced the same way that Derek the Dice was done. Yes, I do, Derek. Oh no, bolters would make it far too easy. We're not getting the Legions of Slaanesh here. But yeah, I like the idea of possibly trying to lay some more story. And equally getting everybody to just, put in bits as we go along. So even as I tried to do there, as I saw suggestions come up, it was right, I will try and steer the story in that direction if I can do it without going way off track. But I like the very much on the fly, like when you're GMing and your players suddenly go left. That's a good idea with real-time subtitles. I've got to work out how I do that. I think YouTube might be able to. Yeah, I deliberately tried to keep it open, Jason, just to see where it went, because there's a certain excitement to that, hence only just having the speakeasy and starting there and seeing where you guys took it. But it's an experimental format, so we can try with a few plots beforehand. We can try without and see what works. The whole idea is I want this to be collaborative. This isn't just mine, it's everybody's. It gives me a chance to work and do things with all of you. So I honestly am open to suggestions. People who see this after the fact, suggestions in the comments would be great. I want to take this forward, but I need ideas. And I think, unless anyone has any questions or anything to say at the end, I'm going to give you about 20 seconds because you're about 20 seconds behind me. And try not to sit here too quietly so that it suddenly goes quiet and gets very, very boring for anybody watching. And as it seems not, I'm going to say farewell. And remember, not every drink you have is good for you. Oh. Okay, skip back and stay in as I suddenly got the questions. Oh, hi Cliff. I hadn't looked so much at reviewing roleplay games. One thing I am actually quite keen on doing, but the technology isn't there for it yet. And by that I mean the individual system hasn't done it, is the new Arkham Horror RPG system. I want to do some live games with. But the trouble with doing that is I really need it to be able to run through a VTT, and they haven't prepared it for VTT yet. But yeah, I could possibly do a side thing talking about RPG experiences, or what I might do is do the more RPG stuff. So I actually have 3 channels. This is the latest. The other 2 were very much done as hobbies. There's the Cave of Creation, which has a load of videos on painting and 3D printing using Hero Forge and using Hero Forge and Foundry. And then there's a kind of one that sat there doing nothing, which is the Cave of Adventure, which was going to be put there for putting out more RPG related scenario, RPG related stuff. So I may well look at doing that on that channel when I get time, because the trouble is if you spread too much on a single channel, the algorithm beats you for it, and suddenly you find you're not getting the views because it's going to people that wouldn't want to see it. But I like the strange comment. I love comment. I like strange comments as well, but that's something altogether different. I like the psychiatrist in the mental hospital. There will be a story that I'm writing called The Algorithm, and there is going to be a game-based Lovecraftian story, but I need to be careful about how I phrase it, because though it's not based on a certain IP, it could be easily said to have ties to that IP. So I'm not going to mention too much about movies with Robin Williams or with sequels with Jack Black. And that said, I really... Tell me about it, Sten. I can look up some stuff for British folklore. The algorithm is the bane of my life. But yeah, there are lots of bits. At the moment, just due to time and me not having enough time to write everything, there is going to be less that I'm writing. YouTube automatically will probably automatically put subtitles on after the fact. It's finding something that will put them on live I've got to work out. It also gets a bit interesting when YouTube tries to put various words into subtitles. I've seen a couple that have made me kind of go, hmm? But thank you all for coming. You've made it a fun evening. And I need to get on and get back to editing Sleepy Hollow. But yes, I like all of your ideas, so I will see what other stuff I can find to add in here and there. The Lovecraft stuff is very popular, so it's deliberately there's... So what have we got coming up? After the Horror at Red Hook is The Curse of Yig, which isn't actually Lovecraft, it's Zelia Bishop, though Lovecraft ghost wrote it. And then it's Sleepy Hollow, and then I've got some stuff from the Dreamlands. But yes, the idea for any of these is collaborative storytelling. That's what I'm aiming to do. It's bringing everybody in and us having fun and creating something together. And I may find that I write them up, or as I get better at it, produce them as a single individual piece and put them out as a properly fully produced story. Who knows? But I must get on. Thank you all for coming. It really did mean a lot. And it's nice seeing so many people in chat and having a lively chat. Anyone who wants access to the Discord, if you go through either Facebook, Instagram or Patreon, and you don't need to sign up for a paid membership for Patreon this month, I'm just to help put people in it and get a community going, and all of you count, opening up access to the Discord. I would try and do it through YouTube, but there's no private message through YouTube for me to get people's details to send them invites to the Discord. So if you contact me on one of those separate media forms, I will send you a message and an invite to the Discord if you want one. And as I said before, please like, please subscribe, please comment, even if it's just food emojis, it helps. Food emojis to feed the algorithm. But that helps boost the algorithm. And if you'd be kind enough, share. All of that gets the channel out there. And that said, back to where I was. Farewell. And remember, don't pick up strange barrels from wagons with strange men. Bye all.